What's up, guys? It's D22-soso Wayne Chiang. We have former high stakes pro, investor, and entrepreneur Sean Snyder. What's up, Sean?
Not much, Wayne. It's great to be here for the first time. What's going on with
So
you?
we have a live at the commerce stream, as you know, and we have a whole new audience, and they love poker. Do you love poker?
To say that I love it would be an understatement, Wayne. As you know, I've played on Live at the Bike in the past a couple of times. I've been a big watcher of Live at the Bike and Bally's Live as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Live at the Commerce has to offer.
I love poker too. I don't miss a single episode of poker live stream, and I said that with a straight face. Okay. All right.
Well,
In all seriousness, it's 2024. We got to give the audience, some tips about life in poker that we've learned over the decades. So we hit decades. That's bad.
it is. You and I have known each other for almost 2 decades. We've come up through the ranks and down the ranks and back up again together. So I think we've made our fair share of mistakes and good decisions,
Sure.
without
Yeah.
a doubt.
First for the audience, a lot of people come up to me and also post in forums and Reddit. They're like, "Oh, I just crushed it these 6 days. Should I go pro?"
That's an opinion. Yeah, that's an opinion, and that's definitely a thought that people have. And I think both of our advice would be no, absolutely not. Whether the sample size is 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, or even in some cases 6 years.
Six years, yeah.
If you've got that day job that you have to go along with it, maybe stick with the day job and keep it your hobby. But there's a lot of people out there that would say, pursue your passion. And if you don't try it out, you'll always wonder if the grass was greener on the other side. So I can't necessarily disagree with that. But it's getting more and more competitive each and every year with all the training sites out there and whatnot. And that doesn't mean that you can't use those training sites and whatnot to your advantage, but you got to keep in mind that you're not the only guy or girl out there that's using those tools. So the rake's not going down, and the opponents aren't getting any softer. That's for sure.
So first and foremost, winning in poker, I think people are mistaken that winning in poker, especially in the short term, is skill based. It has more to do with being dealt winners and
Sure.
being on the right side of variance. And that's kind of thing. If I have aces and you have kings and you don't get that third king or more, I'm gonna win a lot of money on you. And it's not indicative of ability or and it should not correspond to a tangible win rate as a professional poker player. I just ran good against you.
Sure, sure. I mean, in an online database, you can look at things like in a much more technical way. But in the past 7 years or so since I've come back to live poker, I can tell you right now that I've won about 53% of my sessions, which for just simplicity's sake, that's about half your sessions. Like, so what really matters is like the degree to which you're winning in your winners and the degree to which you're losing in your losers over that however many thousands hours it happens to be in those past 7 years or so. And I mean, for me, I've had two losing years in those sorry, I guess it's one losing year and one break even year, which when it comes to paying bills and living your life, that's without
Yeah.
a doubt two losing years in reality. So,
Yeah. And
it feels good when you're on that heater, but they never last. And the good news is when you're on those downswings, as long as you keep your composure, those never last either. But you got to stay level headed throughout and keep grounded in the real world.
so one of the things is poker is kind of a narcissist game. Like everybody wants the way that they think about the game to be the right or close to the right way to play the
Sure,
game. And
absolutely.
that's the allure because it's the same 52 cards, it's the same hand rankings, and then we just, especially if you had not been competitive in games, like you just look like, oh, I know the rules, I know this strategy, and you think it's just better than it actually is. And you
Hmm.
frequently, when you're starting for playing poker, when you start playing poker, you overvalue your own strategy and undervalue your opponent's strategy. And like you and I have been around a long time. Obviously, some people who are very talented, we'll talk about Chris Brewer in a bit, but we can undervalue or overvalue somebody's strategy, overvaluing because they think somewhat similar to us or our echo chamber, and then we might overlook some really good strategies or undervalue their abilities just because, we weren't thinking about that at the time. And this especially comes from very intelligent, successful people. They may not be as fundamentally sound as somebody who's gone through the gauntlet with like training sites, but these guys are smart. They're
Hmm.
smarter than probably us, and maybe by not a small margin, and they know how to read situations. They know how to read people. They've been potentially in business meetings and just know human thresholds of whether they're going to pay or whether they're going to fold, what they value, what they perceive their opponent values as a dollar amount. Like, $10,000 means different things to different people.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's where you can compare between different types of players, whether it be your Joe Schmo at the local card room, or someone like Phill Hellmuth who's seen so much success in tournaments, or maybe someone like Jungleman who does all kinds of off the wall things when you see him play in a very high stakes stream game. You know, uh, they all think they're right, and they may all do some things that are right, but
Right.
they're all wrong that they're all right. But whereas, I mean, you cannot deny Phill Hellmuth's results over his, I mean, it must be close to 50 years now in tournaments, if not at least 40, right?
It's at least 40.
And
I
I
think he's in
mean,
his 50s.
Jungleman's results, both online and in live poker, can't be denied.
Yeah.
I mean, look at another one to add to the list of live cash game streams is Andrew Roble. I think he's the most successful stream cash game player of all time, at least as far as the records we have these days.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, online we've had so many over the years as well. I think Phil Ivey up until the end of like the I forget what it was called back in the day, but the high stakes database type of thing. He was one of the biggest winners, and every one of them had a different way to skin that cat, but they all found their own unique way to do it. And I'm sure every single one of them thought that they had the best way.
Yeah. And like one thing that, and we'll talk about Phill Hellmuth in a bit. I definitely underrated Phill Hellmuth's game. When I was first coming up, I think, a lot of elitist echo chamber um professional players with a lot of good technical skill and good results like online and live would dismiss Helmut's ability. And it took me a while to really appreciate what he's doing. Like exploitation, as you and I know, is very crucial for not only winning money, but winning larger sums of money. And I feel like people who are more polite at the table can't do can't execute as exploitative strategies as Phill Hellmuth, who's able to, and he knows who to antagonize. If he can't antagonize you, he knows he's kind of wasting his time, but he's still going to do a shtick to,
Sure,
maybe throw you off balance. But the people who
sure,
really get triggered off his speeches, they get off balance. They're not on whatever their A game is, even if their A game is an actual A game or it's a C game. Now it's like down a, rung or two, maybe even more. And that's
absolutely.
his, execution of throwing people off balance and gaining EV when he's able to catch people. And is he perfect? No. Like, we've seen him misstep, like, but that's the same thing with all poker players is we all misstep. But do his missteps like outweigh the benefits of all his shticks? Like,
I mean, I think his success over the years has spoken pretty clearly that his missteps are very much outweighed by the good things that he's doing correctly. And as I've stepped away from poker a bit and focus on other things in life, I start to realize and admire like the other things that he's done for himself. We could
absolutely
probably spend 100 different podcasts talking about all the different things that Phil Hellmuth has done, good, bad, indifferent,
correctly.
entertaining, and frustrating. But he's built a very unique brand for himself
Right.
over his decades in the poker world. And if you hear a pro like sneer about how they're drooling at the idea of playing with him, I, I mean, you have news for him. He's not playing with you. He's
Exactly.
playing in a better game. He
Yeah.
chose a better game. He put himself in a position to play with a much wealthier person and a much looser and like more action person than that person laughing at him is. So it makes no difference that you might be better than him because he's never going to play with you.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of building a brand like a person like Phill Hellmuth has done for himself.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like, I don't know what he read or what he heard from me, but he called me out a couple years ago. He's like, "You were anti Phill Hellmuth." I'm like, "Yeah, for the first 10 years of like my poker career." And I said, I corrected that. Now I have nothing but great things to say about you because I think Phill Hellmuth is definitely top three. I think Moneymaker is number one, and then it's between Negreanu and Helmuth for number two and number three of like people good for poker. I think Helmuth is great for poker, not for the reasons he thinks so. It's because whether you agree with him or you disagree with him, he's bringing the right people into poker.
Yeah, I think in this day and age, the moneymaker effect has been so far long gone that I think it has to be between Hellmuth and
And
Negreanu right
Negreanu.
now. And I think Hellmuth probably takes the number one spot as like the most recognizable player right now,
I
at
think
least in
yeah.
my perspective. It's
In
close though.
Yeah, like it's gonna fluctuate, but in
Sure,
recent polls, like I've seen on
sure.
X/Twitter, like Negreanu's taking the lead, but
Does he?
they're
Yeah.
just like
It
it's neither
certainly
here
doesn't
nor there.
surprise me. Yeah. I mean, I've played with Hellmuth a ton over the years as well. And, I've been on the receiving end of his his rants more than once. And I don't mind. I think they're hilarious.
I do
If
too.
you're being berated at the table, it probably means you just want a hand. So you
Yeah,
should probably learn to take it.
sure. But
And it's really not a big deal at all. It's part of the game.
I think like one of the mistakes that I made, like evaluating Phil Hellmuth, and the same thing as his critics, is they're evaluating Hellmuth's direct um effects and correlation on us one on one and as a person in our life and echo chamber. Whereas like his shtick is affecting the entire poker world
Sure.
and the world outside of poker, looking into poker as a lens, like what is this poker thing? So he very wisely and smartly like got the most amount of bracelets, in which I talked to so many groups and they just say he has the most amount of bracelets, he's the best,
Sure.
which is like poker has a lot of trouble with tangible achievements because
Sure.
there's no achievement that really correlates to prowess.
I mean, there definitely is, and it's money, but at the end of the day, does it really matter where the money came from? I mean, he built it through sponsorships, he built it through business deals that he obtained through getting those bracelets. So, I mean, did not those bracelets also contribute to having made that money? Like, if he had sat there grinding cash games and gotten that money, would it have made a difference? I mean, it was just another path that led him to a similar result, and for that reason, I don't think you can deny that
And even
money's money.
then,
Wait,
even
money's
then,
money. So
yeah,
he's still got as much success, if not more, than almost anyone in the game has ever gotten.
yeah. And in the end, he has more professional respect than a lot of people
Sure,
claiming
sure.
that he is, not as good as he claims to be or whatever. But like in the end, it
Who
doesn't even
cares? Who
matter. Yeah.
cares? Absolutely.
Like,
He's a man working hard. He has a family. He's done his business. And aside from Bitcoin Latinum, what bad things can you say about him?
yeah, I mean he's a brand. Like I said, he
Yeah,
brings the right people into poker because people unfortunately like our younger selves didn't see,
yeah,
like we had access to all of his actions and we didn't learn this lesson until I don't know how many years you were in, but maybe
absolutely.
like 10 years in. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, get subsidized, get branding, be able to get into better games, have a relationship. Doesn't matter if
He's
they,
been doing all the things that just now people are catching on to
yeah,
for his entire career, basically. So he's a man ahead of his time. And
way ahead.
like I said, we literally could talk about all the like different things that he's done that are, I think, pretty interesting, honestly, for
Sure.
podcast after podcast. But we can't talk about Phil the whole time. I'm sorry. We got to move
Okay,
on.
so in the end, it's about like whether you want to be a professional poker player in
Right.
2024, and yours, mine's, Garrett's, Andy's, many Dan Zach's all say no. And I think that the fantasy, which was more valid when you and I and Garrett and Andy and Dan Zach were all coming up, is just you sit in any game and then you just like dominate.
Sure.
You just
I
like,
mean, when you and I were playing a bunch together, there was the 40-80 limit hold'em, which was like, that was a great way to make money. But at the same time, you could walk into Commerce or a number of other card rooms and you'd have like all these games between 40-80 and like 400-800 where you would have like stepping stones to climb your way up. And like in this day and age, you'll have like maybe a 2-5 no limit and then a 10, 20 no limit, and then a 200, 400 no limit. Like where all of a sudden you go from needing like 20,000 to 100,000 to, $5 million. And that's a little bit of a different scenario. And the way you get access to certain games isn't quite the same as it used to be. You don't just plop yourself down, even if you somehow do have enough money to play in certain games. Limit poker is doing quite well in LA
LA, yeah.
still. But when I say quite well, that's quite well
Still,
relative to the rest of the country or the rest of the world. But
and other
even relative to how it was doing in LA 10 or 15 years ago, it's still like a shell of its former self, of course. So, I mean, for me, that was my bread and butter was limit hold'em, and then to a lesser degree mixed games. And I've been dealt maybe 20 hands of limit poker in the past 3 years or so.
in the
But
end, it's about
specifically
healthier.
on the subject of like having poker as your primary source of income, like I've found the most happiness in the past 3 years or so. Like as I start to branch into other things, I still play poker regularly. Like I've played far too much recently. I've probably been playing about 40 hours a week recently, which is it's pretty draining, honestly. I'm not really happy that
Fuck
I've been
off.
putting, yeah, I know you still play a ton, but when I'm playing 2 or 3 days a week, like it doesn't mean that like just because you're not a professional poker player, quote unquote, doesn't mean that you can't still be profitable at it and
Yeah.
enjoy it and, be a good player for the games. In some of the games that I play, like I'm literally the reason that people come to the game sometimes. It doesn't mean that you can't still win in the game.
Yeah.
Poker can be very fun just as a side thing that you do on occasion.
Yeah. And
So that would be my very, very strong recommendation to anyone is that you get as good as you can while you're still enjoying the process of getting good and play in your free time, but do something that gives you some benefits, do something that makes you feel productive, because I can guarantee you that after almost 20 years of doing poker, that you're going to start to regret that maybe there was something better you could have done with your life where you had a more positive impact on the world.
yeah, it's not even just that. It's just like, product. And this, again, it's not universal because some people like live and breathe like the predatory nature of professional poker. And, what I was saying about tangible achievements is like, so you win the main event. So you have the most bracelets. So you have the best graph. So you play the highest
Sure,
stakes in
sure.
reg. And year after year, you're supposedly the best until you go broke. Like there's no, I don't want to say it. Yeah, there's no tangible achievement that really strongly correlates to I am an expert of this game and an authority and just kind of lead the rest of the community in the
Sure. I
world,
mean, again, to me, the measure is money, but it's not like another job where you can be like, oh, here's my degrees that I've gotten over the years. It's
Yeah,
like you just have your money. Like no one, there's no like thing you can show someone without just looking like a dick, I guess.
yeah.
It's how to describe it exactly. I
If I'm
agree with you in a way.
if the
I
thing
agree with you
is
in a way. I know exactly what you're saying, Wayne. Yeah, I definitely do agree with you.
the thing is like if it is money, then you have to just like look at your background, your upbringing, your background, your ethnicity. Do you even have access to the ability if you had the right networking and skills to make that kind of dollar amount? Is there any
Sure.
repercussions to one being in shadier environments, or two, are you going to be shady yourself, or two, or three, like, fight these things? Do you have the ethical nature to like keep fleecing people over and over? And,
Right.
what?
That's personally like, especially in the live poker environment, because I would definitely want to make that distinction. Online, I think that's an easier like clock in, clock out type of situation where
Yeah.
I think it's a bit more lenient where you can have a bit of a balanced life and not let it have too much of a drain on you emotionally, compared to how it might be in live poker. Whereas live poker, I mean, we
So
both know it's
slow.
very easy to get yourself involved with a certain type of crowd and go down a certain type of path. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't. Obviously, we both have more experience in LA than other places, and maybe other places are a bit more wholesome. But my experience is largely that when you're playing bigger games, regardless of where you are, it ends up a certain kind of way.
Yeah.
And it's just it becomes a very, very it takes a very, very heavy toll on your soul after you do it for thousands upon thousands of hours, and over your life you're wagering literally billions of dollars
Yeah.
if you're playing high stakes. It turns out that's a lot of money, that's a lot of time. You meet a lot of unsavory people who are willing to do a lot more things than you're willing to do to get the money,
Yeah.
and if you're willing to do those things, then
Maybe it's for you.
more power to you. But
Yeah.
You know, it's not for a lot of us, and that's
And
why we're having this discussion right now.
yeah, exactly. So if you have this like fantasy in which like, when Sean and I and Garrett or and others were coming up, where you just like plop down in the game, you're, one of the top players and you just should be winning like XBB per hour, then yeah, but like it's not that you can't win, it's that there's less access to good situations.
Mhm.
And with the raising the rising cost of living, and also we had a discussion, was it 2013, like when I went broke, I'm just like, I have nothing on my resume to like recover, and like poker had already taken a toll on me for a little over 10 years. People had said, Wayne, you just haven't aged. I'm like, yeah, stop fucking playing high stakes poker. It really helps. And a lot of people, that still play, they don't look so hot,
Yeah. I mean,
Somewhere
I know you, like, you don't even care for the game at all. Me personally, like, I'm sick. I still love the game of poker. Like, I think I
you're
told you
sick.
last week, I drove down from a 25-50 game where I had just paid off my 60,000 I lost the week before. I quit losing another 15,000. I drove straight back down to San Diego and played a 5-5 game all night till like 6 or 7 in the morning. I couldn't resist. And I'll be there again tonight playing 5-5 until 6 or 7 in the morning. It's a fun game. It's a good group of people. And I can't wait to play tonight. Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
That's me. Like you give me the right group of players. I really don't care if the big blind's $2 or if it's $200. I'm probably going to have a good time, win or lose.
that's very admirable. A lot of people,
I'm a sick man, Wayne. I'm a
well,
sick man.
it's
It's a
not even
beautiful
that.
game. It's
It
a
it
beautiful game with the right group of players.
I mean, I'm very similar in that like the stakes range I play will be like all the way to the bottom to, very high. Not all the way to the top in this era,
Sure,
but it definitely in past eras I'll play in the biggest game in the room or the site. But like I'm still willing to play 11 cent MTTs if it's overlay, and
sure.
especially if I'm playing like 12 tables, like, what's adding another
Honestly,
table?
a friend invited me to, like, I think a $20 buy-in Super Bowl game, and I feel bad that I can't go because my friend asked me to support his like 5-10 half and half game over the Super Bowl, and I'm committed to that one. I live and die by that game, so I got to go to that one early. But I would have happily played that $20 Super Bowl tournament too.
It's more just like some people, once they play a certain stakes level, have
Yeah,
trouble dropping down, and that's already the death of you. Like
sure,
if you can't drop down stakes, there's no way you could survive, just because
right,
you will run bad, regardless if it's your fault or not your fault, or
yeah.
some percentage either way. And if you can't drop down stakes, you're just dead.
I'm fortunate in that case, just by having played for so long and having built like a fairly comfortable life for myself, that I'm able to afford the top stakes, but it also doesn't terribly matter like if I happen to have a downswing. So I can play whatever I prefer to play. Like if I have another losing year, it makes no difference really. As you know, I certainly get frustrated when I'm losing in the bigger games because it's
Sure,
it's like it's
it's
not going to help me
human.
financially at all to win in the smaller ones from that point. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that I don't enjoy winning in the smaller games still. If I lose 15,000 one day and win 1,500 the next, like I still feel like a winner when I win the 1,500. But yes,
The
absolutely, moving down is a key component. And unfortunately, like I mentioned before, it's not like it was in the old days. Like when you're going 2.5 to 10.20 to 200, 400, the move down is not quite
Not
like it
that
was when you
much.
could
Yeah,
go 100, 200 limit to 6120 limit to 4080 limit to 2040 limit. It's a thing that's much more
close.
difficult to do these days. Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to
I
be much more careful with your bankroll, both building it and taking shots.
I guess the last major topic about this is what games to play, because like so many people, especially watching televised poker, have this fantasy of being an elite no limit hold'em player, in which
Sure.
you and I know it goes really far fucking down the rabbit hole, and super pros of
Mhm.
past definitely don't sneeze at you or me in the classic game of no limit hold'em, but
You and I both have different opinions, and I bet neither one of us says no limit hold'em.
well, it's more about our no limit hold'em ability. And then, like of course, we both have access to very strong no limit hold'em players who have kept up with the latest,
Sure.
and like people who think that that kind of technical knowledge and a little of experience is going to take you the rest of your life. You're sorely mistaken. It's not
The
impossible.
best no limit hold'em player that I ever regularly played with was getting cheated on one of the well-known sites that there's still drama on to this day. He was like breaking even, still like slightly winning, but I mean he wasn't performing at the level he should have, and he was running pretty poorly in a very good public game for about a year. So yeah, he quit poker and he got himself a normal job, moved across the country and got himself a normal job. So that was the fate of the best no limit hold'em player that I've ever played with. And then I think the second best player that I've regularly played with was Chris Brewer, who maybe he's playing online a decent bit these days, but obviously he's well known for his tournament play these days rather than his cash play.
Well, um, yeah, to kind of put a cap on that is, or the subject matter is, you could be a no limit hold'em specialist, or you could branch out to other games, in which the other games the money's going to dry up in the ecosystems as well. So it's a
Sure.
race to kind of, get the money in other places. And right now PLO is kind of a fad. Now that PLO is a little bit taken off,
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's been a fad for the past 15 years. So
I think a lot of, like, Joe Ingram, Dylan Weissman, a couple other, Jane Anders, all these people, them promoting PLO has been just great for the game, because when I went to the win tournament, the 1500, like I was watching people play, I'm like, wow, like that there was really a blessing that these guys push PLO, because while they improved over like the average play, the sheer volume of people who are still going to be losing in those fields because they think they know what they're doing, or closer to, is just going to feed the ecosystem, for a while until it dries up, like
the
Hold'em.
atmosphere of PLO games and the size of PLO games has changed so much since when I first started playing the game. I mean, I remember seeing it originally, like I would just see the huge games at the Rio over the summer during World Series. Like you would see 100, 200 would often be the smallest game. But here in San Diego, they had like a quarter or a 25-50 would run at the Palomar regularly. But that game would play enormous. It eventually became like a 10, 20, 40 half and half game a lot of the time. But even then, like tons of players would have 50,000 or more on the table, and that was like up till 2012 even. But nowadays it's commonplace just to see 5-5, 2-3, or even like 1-2 with a $5 bring-in PLO games. And the old school high stakes guys, many of whom are now broke because it turns out they couldn't afford to play those big games. They scoff at the idea of these small games, but at the same time,
They exist.
when I see one of these games or sit in it, and then I see these guys sitting in like a 5-5 or 5-10 no limit game, looking down at these guys in the smaller PLO games, I can't help but wonder what the hell these guys in the no limit game are thinking, because you do not have to have any idea how to play PLO to be winning in those PLO games at a significantly higher rate than I could beat the no limit games for.
But
Because I mean, people are just sitting there, they're being super social, they're having a great time. You know, I've played a lot of different kinds of poker games, and PLO is easily one of my worst. But you don't have to be very good to beat a live PLO game, and they're super fun. You can get in there, gamble, enjoy yourself. So for me, if I was looking to play live poker and be super lazy and not study much, PLO would be my easy choice,
that's
without
what
a
I
doubt.
that's what I
But you got to
tell.
have the money. You got to be able to handle the variance. And even a 1-2 game, I would consider that like you need a 5-10 no limit hold'em bankroll for it.
Yeah, I mean, probably.
What's
Um,
what's your opinion, Wayne?
no, my like pretty spot on. My whole thing is like people, because I'm more in the media side. I've been so for the last 8 or 9 years. Like people obsessed with like the no limit hold'em hierarchy. Those are
Hmm.
the people like looking down, because they want to be the guy that shows up in any game, is the best player, and just fleeces any field. It's not like it doesn't exist, because there is a number one player on any given site or any given casino, and you could be the king of the hill until, either life circumstance doesn't allow you to, or somebody does get definitively better than you. And
Sure.
that's kind of the trap of uh identifying yourself to not only poker, but like no limit hold'em especially. So those are the people that, you see looking down at the PLO thing. And the thing is, let's be honest, a lot of people play no limit hold'em well. People are often surprised, just because I don't reg the no limit hold'em games. I've won most of my money, or in my career, in online no limit hold'em. So, you know, that carries over, and like it's not like I forgot how to play. There was a time where I was, working more than playing, and I actually doubted. I was like, oh, maybe the game has passed me by. And then over quarantine, well, we talked about this, like, I didn't have a problem, and then online didn't have a problem to say the least.
Hmm.
So, and then obviously I have a strong network, so I could ask them about like the latest stuff, like Chris Brewer being one of them, and Dan Zach and others, and just like, you know, they're not the ones there playing in my game. So I can't, even though they are superior players than me, I don't have to like follow, like I have to judge the situation myself.
Sure. You
They
should
don't,
learn everything you can from their experience and their
yeah.
wisdom, but you should also deviate greatly from what they're doing and apply it to your own circumstances.
Yeah, so like 80%, maybe even 90%, the feedback I get is like, I don't agree with your play, blah, 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 blah. And, first of all, when I send them hands, it's got to be
Hmm.
anomalous, right? It's like if it's obvious what the answer
Sure.
is and I max value or
Right. Then you're
whatever.
just wasting both of your time if you just send them a completely normal hand.
Yeah, and then, when I send them hands, they appreciate it too, because obviously I'm going to send them more anomalous hands. And I usually get, feedback of that, like, I would not do it this way. But again, like, they don't know the player history. They don't know what happened, like, 4 orbits before, like, God forbid, the beginning of the session, or if I bad beat somebody or they bad beat me and whatever. So, like, all that takes a large effect. And, you and I still think lowly of tournaments, even though I've been playing tournaments more. But
If I ever won one win, I bet I would love them, but that day hasn't come yet.
well, you need to play him to win him.
Indeed you do. Indeed you do. I was a little jealous of Chris Brewer, to be honest, when I found out that he won the 10,000 no limit deuce to seven bracelet at the World Series, since that's one of the very few that I would actually like to win one day. But again, he had the edge of having played it,
Yeah.
so he was much more likely to win than me.
The other thing is you don't see all the buy-ins. Like, even like when people say my global poker graph is straight up, like, no, there's like plenty of Sundays. I literally brick like,
Indeed. One day someone's got $11 million on Hendon Mob, and another day they find a bag under the seat and they go into the bathroom with it. Just these things happen. These things do happen.
what I want to say is like I was in a Twitter spaces with Sean Deeb and Ari Engel, obviously
Mhm.
much very accomplished tournament
Yeah,
players.
absolutely.
Sean D brought out some good points about like the skills in tournaments that you and I took for granted. It's like one, in tournaments, you have to play against every sort of like personalities.
Absolutely.
And that's something where it's like if you're regging, a certain game, you only need to like understand that
Uh,
ecosystem.
If you're playing 100, 200 no limit hold'em online, you only need to play against good players. Like,
Yeah.
yes, I mean, the dream is that you get to play against a bad player, but the money will come to you, like, regardless. Like, you don't need to focus on how to play against bad players. You need to focus on how to play against good players. Meanwhile, in 2007, when you're playing 40, 80 limit hold'em, like, you needed to beat bad players. Like, who cares how you're doing against good players?
Yeah.
And that's one thing 100% I'll agree with Sean Deeb on. Like, and if you're playing a 1500 no limit or the main event, for example, especially, like, look how soft that field is at the beginning, but look how tough it gets, even like as
Sure.
early as day two or day three or something. Like, you need to like have your tournament game like be these people charging these very high markups. Like, they don't realize that, like, yes, the field's soft, but you need to know what to do like once you get some chips. And that's something, unfortunately, like that I have no experience in whatsoever.
The other things is, like some people, if you're playing cash and you know your tilt tendencies and have the ability to come up or, get up, you don't have that uh you don't have that in tournaments, that luxury. Like you have to like
Absolutely.
play. And then like the random draws plus like there's only one optimal result, which is winning the thing.
Sure.
So all that added together, plus like, the different stages, the bubble, which, like, let's be honest, you and I probably fucking hate the bubble, but it's, important skill set. And then how to change gears on the final table, et cetera, et cetera. I think after playing probably whatever 10,000 tournaments online now, I have a more appreciation for the skill sets, which I'll be honest, you and I don't have that problem because all that stuff was already ingrained for us. But it isn't for other people. So they don't like
Yeah.
when we say it's donkiments and other people say it's donkiments, it's actually two different sides like the
Oh, not,
rating.
not at all. I respect all the hard work that you put into it over these thousands and thousands of tournament samples, because when I say documents, wait, I mean documents. I mean, I don't care bubble. I don't care none of the I only play World Series tournaments because all I care about is I do want to win like one bracelet at
Sure.
some point. So like the rare occasions that I play one, there's only one place for me, Wayne. Well, there's two. There's busted and first. And so far the only place I've gotten is busted.
There's also that
But like in my heart, like if I'm only going to be playing 10Ks going on forward, so I would like to work a little bit on my game to like on occasion preserve some chips just to, respect my money a little bit.
I think people don't want to hear what I have to say, but it's like
That's probably why they need to hear it.
okay. Well, they asked me, they're like, what advice do you have for like cash games or tournaments? I'm like, and obviously there's literally, even if I were to coach them, there's no guarantee that I could, flip the switch and make them winning. But one thing is like when you take one of these charts, these pre-flop charts in cash games or tournaments, you could just chop off the bottom 25%, maybe even the 33%, and that'll just improve your game like greatly.
Well, one thing a lot of these players aren't keeping in mind, which as a person that works for a casino, probably no one working at a casino wants to hear this, is that the rake is a thing that exists. And that is why you can do the thing that you just suggested. Because as soon as there's a rake, you should either be opening for a higher amount of big blinds, well, which also means you should probably be opening less, or you should just be opening less, or both, of course. So yes, that would not be bad. Also, you can be taking a much more aggressive line by three betting more before the flop, which again means that probably you should be playing fewer hands. On the other hand, you're going to be contested less frequently because people don't play as aggressively as they're supposed to. So you could consider adding some more hands. But the less frequently you play rake, the better. So whatever reasonable thing you do to accomplish that is generally going to be a fairly good thing.
So when people just trouble me and or ask me if they could trouble me for a hand history, and I just listen to it, and I one don't know how to respond to their hand because I'm like, there's just too many things to criticize.
Yeah. I mean, as a person who's a huge proponent of being great for the game, giving as much action as humanly possible, let me give some real talk right now. If you're playing in a 2-5 game and you get ace queen offsuit under the gun, 9 or 10 handed, you could throw it away. Nothing bad would ever happen. I swear, nothing bad will ever happen if the rake is $7. Would I throw it away? No, of course not. I'm going to raise ace 10 offsuit because I'm stupid. But you could look at ace queen offsuit and you can throw it away and you're going to be just fine.
I've literally said the same thing, especially like in like when the commerce stays in 10-20, when you're dealing with like a lot of pretty strong players. Like,
Sure.
yeah, that shit just goes in the fucking muck.
Sure. I can tell you another thing. You could also limp with pocket deuces, which is just horrible. And that's probably also just fine. Would I? No, I would fold it. But that's not really the point. I mean, it's the good news is poker's not quite dead. You have a lot of freedom. And for anyone that chooses not to take the PLO path, your goal is to play 5-10 no limit, and you're stuck at 2-5 right now. The biggest piece of advice I could actually give you is to drop down to 1-3 or 2-3 because the game is way better and probably plays almost as big with almost no pros in it.
I
I'm sorry to my one friend that's a 2-3 player that knows this secret. I'm sorry to anyone else out there listening that loves 2-3 instead of 2-5 or 5-5. That's an actual secret. I don't play either of these stakes, so you're not going to kill any of my action.
I literally
But
said that to
yeah,
JJ De La Garza. I said
yeah,
like
the
a
game
lot of
is way, way
times
better.
a lot of times, especially in the night shift, like the 2-3 game is just like massively better than the 5-5,
Yeah.
which is raise, call, fold, raise, call, fold,
I'm
raise, fold, fold,
I'm
fold.
not familiar with the buy-ins in LA. I'm sure they're shorter just like they are in San Diego, but I can assure you without seeing a single lineup that the game in the $3 blind game is significantly better in your local card room than the game with the $5 blind because the game with the $5 blind has all the so-called pros
Nits.
in it. Yeah.
Yeah. And
They're
like
there to try to grind you down.
yeah,
Maybe the $10 blind game is the best game, but I can assure you that in almost 100% of cases, the $3 blind game will be better than the $5 blind game.
when stacks more liberally go in,
Yeah.
that's the game
People
to
are
play.
there to like relax, have a good time, just gamble a bit.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm not that crazy. Anyway, that's our bit for whether you should be a poker pro in 2024. So let's talk about this current superstar that you had the fortune or misfortune of running into when he was coming up, Chris Brewer.
We had a lot of fun together at Ocean's 11, man. We used to hang out outside of poker as well all the time. I haven't seen him, it's been a while actually. We still talk relatively frequently, but yes, Chris Brewer, the man, the myth, the legend.
What year? What years did you?
What year did we meet? I guess it must have been 2015, maybe 2016. It was actually before I had really started playing much live poker again. We happened to be in a three-handed game together with him, myself, and DGAF back at Ocean's 11.
Oh
It was a
wow,
it was a
what a
$5
three-handed
chip
game.
game, as I recall. So I'm not really sure how it became 10, 20, 40, but it was meant to be that the three of us would create a game like that, I suppose.
I'm not sure which of the three would suggest to kick it up first. I guess you
It's
could just
just
like roll a
it just
dice,
happened.
roll
As
three
I
sided
recall, it
dice.
happened, and then the three of us faded into the bar, not shortly after. But yes, he and I
Um,
have played some fun hands over the years. He kind of went through a phase in his cash game career where he went from not very technically sound and trying to win every hand to very, very technically sound to more splashy and realizing that you could take the technically sound aspects out and then go back to trying to win every hand when it was more applicable. And during his not technically sound phase, I went on a great phase myself where I flopped a lot of sets and calling and calling and calling. You know me, Wayne. I never make any hands, so it was truly my pleasure to be able to call him and then call him and then call him and him just tap the table if you can hear that in the background and
we get here.
say, "You got it, you got it, you got it." Which is
What?
always, yeah, he ran quite poorly in the biggest game in San Diego, and he ran scorching hot in every single other game in San Diego, which he's probably mentioned in the past on other podcasts.
So did you have you had any memorable hands with them?
Yeah, I was drunk as a skunk for this one, but I will not forget it because of how poorly I played it. Yes, absolutely. I think we were playing, it must have been 25-50 or 50-100 at Ocean's 11. I was on the button, three or four-handed, I suppose it doesn't matter. I had a 8-7 offsuit. He defended the big blind. And my belief at this time was that he would three bet with king queen offsuit 100% of the time. So and maybe 8-7 suited 100% of the time. Not really sure that matters, but at any rate, the flop comes like Jack 10-4 rainbow, I suppose. He checks, I see bet for whatever the reasonable amount is on this flop at this year that this was happening, and he calls. The turn is an offsuit nine, but possibly a suited nine. You're gonna have to forgive me. The hand was over 6 years ago, and I had been drinking. He check raises rather large, and obviously I have a straight. We're not folding straights yet. In fact, we're hoping to get all in eventually. I call. The river is a 7, so it's 7, 9, 10, jack. So an 8, just any 8 makes a straight, and then the 4, 5, whatever the heck it is. I have a weakness if I've been drinking. I don't drink much anymore when I'm playing, but I have a weakness in no limit poker, and that is if you say all in and I've been drinking too much, I might not really know how much is in the pot, and I might just say call. So I have like 1.5 times pot, maybe at least 1.25 times pot, and I pretty quickly call. And he has king queen. He has the hand that he doesn't have, and I lose. That's pretty much the long story short. And my friend, the one that quit poker, he just looks at me and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" He's like, "You had a lot of chips left, right?" And that's the uh, if I had like pocket queens, pocket kings, like a hand that actually blocked king queen, that would have been much better than the straight that I'd actually had for those not really look for those that like are thinking, oh well, you had a straight. That's not really the hand you want to have there as an 8. You want to have like a hand that's blocking the hands that he's actually going to have, like especially a pair of queens. Um, would have been fairly strong blocking both king queen and queen 8. Yeah, that's it. We just we paid off the 1.5 times pot with the one card bottom straight. It's not the hand you're looking for. You got a lot of 8s by that point in the hand. You got a lot of better hands to call with, including your own king queens, your own queen 8s that you're always calling with. The 8's not the one, guys. The 8 is not the one for 1.5 times pot, even against Squirrely Chris, and that was Squirrely Chris, but he's almost never bluffing there. I guess once in a while he's got like queen 10, queen 9, something like that, God willing. But that's it. He just said all in, and I said call because that was the only word that I knew at the time.
Did you have any inkling that he was going to be a super pro when he was coming up?
Um, I mean, he certainly had the desire to be like a few of like I had already had experience being like I guess I don't know I was the guy that played like the biggest games at Commerce briefly at one point, and I had basically long since given up on those ambitions. Like a couple of our friends had played extremely high stakes already before, and like he seemed like he was driven to push it to that point. But I mean, like playing 100, 200 no limit and playing like a 250K tournament are also vastly
Different.
different things,
Yeah.
clearly. And I don't think really anyone goes into poker with ambitions like that. Obviously, like a certain set of circumstances have to occur to even be in a position to be able to do that kind of thing. So yeah, certainly, I think he did have the ambition to like make it big, but not on the scale that he really has. And it's really cool that he's been able to, because I think he really enjoys it.
Sure. I mean,
So I'm
like,
like I'm stoked for him, because like it's something that none of my other poker friends have really done. So it's cool to have a friend that has done it and succeeded
yeah,
as he has. Yeah.
obviously you're
Especially, sorry to interrupt, but like
no,
especially because he was like, everyone knows, like he was running worse than everyone for super long. So like now having seen him have like quite a bit of success, it's really cool.
yeah. And that's the thing is like we were talking about earlier, is, you have this guy who's incredibly ambitious, incredibly talented. Is he one of the best? I don't know. Well, we're not in the mix, so we're
Right.
not at liberty to judge. But he ran bad, like with
Yeah.
all this hard work, and that could happen to you. And are you Chris Brewer in a sense that whether whatever his skill set is, are you studying as hard? Are you as talented? Are you nitpicking like all these things that he's
Sure.
definitely doing. And if he makes a mistake, he's going to adjust. Like, are you, or are you going to be arrogant? And if you run good, you're going to be like, oh, it was all skill.
Hmm.
I
I
think
mean,
that,
another thing I respect from his game is like I know he started playing. I think they play like 1-2 PLO8 or something weird in Oregon. I think that's kind of where he started. Then he was grinding like 2-3 and 5-5 at Oceans. He got beat down every time we were playing like 10 and a quarter, 25-50, 5100. He ran scorching hot playing like 5-5 and 5-10. But even so, I mean, he did take an absolute beat down playing the 10 and a quarter in bigger games. I mean, he studied as hard as anyone that he studied harder than I did, that's for sure. I don't care that much about studying. I have no reason to. I mean, I'm too lazy for that stuff, too old for that stuff. But it's cool to see someone in this day and age put in all that work and actually have it pay off for him.
yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, when I didn't know that you knew him when I played against him. I didn't know who he was, but like, I looked at him I'm like, okay, this guy wants to be a super pro. So, I took an unorthodox line. If obviously you know anything about me, red flags should be going off in your head if you see, the actions that I'm taking. But he didn't know who I was. And so, I induced the bluff because I'm like, this guy cannot help but squeeze. So
If he knew that I knew you, I would have told him that you're unbluffable as well. But
well, good thing you didn't. But like, yeah, no, I did the same thing. Just like, and then I found out you knew him, and you had a good rapport, and also viewed his talent, especially his work ethic. But just like, him getting beaten down to higher stakes, that's happened to you and me like how many goddamn times, because you're just not ready.
yep.
And then once you become ready, some people may enjoy it. People like myself found my life to be much more miserable, regging those games. It's obviously great when you win, but then when you lose, or you just like have no sense of accomplishment, like when you're downstairs at Bellagio, you just look, there's a couple steps up, or you look at Bobby's room or whatever, and you think it's so cool, and then when you're actually there, you're like, it's just another poker game.
No, it is. I mean, in these days for me, it's mostly just that I don't need it in my life anymore. I realized after the past few weeks of playing bigger again, more money faster is a nice thing, but just having cash like on hand always just to play the games that I regularly play is better. And after losing a pretty significant amount of cash, I just I realized that losing basically what a normal year worth of winning in poker casually is just not something that's really worth investing my time into. Obviously, I I didn't actually lose because I had won that much in the previous few weeks, but I remember what actually swinging felt like again, and I realized that I'm not 24 years old anymore. I'm 38
Yeah.
years old now, and that's a young people's game.
it's a young person's game, and
Yep.
unfortunately, you kind of need that irresponsibility to kind of, do well in these environments too. And then the older you get, you just have like lower risk tolerance, and it just is what
Yeah.
it is. It's been talked about on other podcasts, and has far less to do with technical skill and ability than it is that, like, what, there are more important things in life than trying to beat this stakes.
Yeah. Again, it's also a different poker atmosphere, like mentioned a couple times before. It's not like when I lose playing 100, 200 that I can just go play like
Yeah,
50,
50,
100 or
100
whatever
or
happens. Right,
25, 50.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Like the reality is like I happen to
there's no
lose in a 25,
options.
50 game that was playing 200, 400 that day. And it's 25, 50 the next time. And between that, I'm going to be playing 5, 5 to 10, 25. So it is what it is.
So do you have any advice for the poker streams out there?
Advice,
Yeah.
so much. Just in this podcast, enjoy poker.
Hmm.
That's if you're not enjoying poker, you're playing wrong. So either stop playing or find yourself a way to enjoy it. And if you're on poker social media all the time and it's upsetting you, the best thing you can always do is log off. Don't get too caught up in it. If you're part of like the actual poker world that's in the streets day in, day out, do your best not to engage with it. Don't let it frustrate you. Don't type something that someone's going to screenshot that they're going to hold against you later. Just don't let yourself get to the point where you're gonna have to hit that delete button. Trust me, I do it all the time. I've hit that delete button too many times. I know there's screenshots out there, the stupid shit that I've said. Yep, I know. I know you're thinking, yep, that's me all the time. Don't let that be you. Just don't even hit the send button. Yeah, I know Wayne's laughing. Yeah, don't hit the send button. Don't be that guy or
Don't be
girl.
that guy or girl.
Enjoy poker. Try to enjoy poker social media, even though I know it's tough sometimes. And try to make the game better for yourself, for the people you play with, and for everyone.
I think part of the disconnect too is the people who haven't gone through the gauntlet, like, view, and once upon a time we did too, like, view poker in a different lens that, um, when you actually go through the gauntlet. So you kind of know, if there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, or there's literally skeletons at the end of the rainbow. Um, that's when we were coming up during, after the moneymaker boom, all of our eyes were just like dollar signs. We just like wanted to be what we saw, if not better than what we saw on camera. And it's the same thing going on in this era. And the thing is, the people who haven't gone through the gauntlet don't know what's smoke and mirrors, or just like when people are screaming through a megaphone and are wrong and are, what's going to happen. Like the
Well,
people
I mean, the
I don't
reality
know.
is that not everyone wants to be a pro. Like some people just want to sit there enjoying the game and having fun.
Yeah,
And there's still a decent amount of people that are just out there doing just that day in, day out, going to the casino and enjoying themselves. But my experience by and large is that even those people, they are not enjoying themselves like they used to.
sure.
And I think a big cause of that is people, not us necessarily, but people like us, like pros, semi-pros. It's the way we react to the game, the way we behave at the table. And I think we could do a lot better to make the game more enjoyable for the people that we would like to play with.
Yeah, I mean, I get comments that I don't get upset with the game. Like, bro, trust me, I get upset.
Honestly, I think getting upset at the game is a pretty natural thing, and I think people can stand to be a little more emotional as long as they don't point those directions at people. I think it can be funny. I think it can be like a decent outlet to like show that you're not necessarily a robot sometimes. But I'm a world-renowned whiner, so it's maybe I'm biased.
Speaking of whiners, you want to talk about some other players? I'm just kidding. We'll talk about
we'll,
some
we'll
other
get to them
people.
next time.
We'll get to them next time. Let's cut this one at this point. This is Sean Snyder, former high stakes poker pro, now investor and entrepreneur, and he will be commentating on Live at the Commerce Valley Live Poker in many upcoming episodes, and playing as well.
Hopefully, you'll see me on some Fridays. It's been a pleasure, Wayne.
All right, take it easy. And this pop up just happens.